Caverns and networks of hills building up over the time, and they vary in size. So it really depends on how you conduct the site investigation, whether you can capture this or not. But I believe it is impossible for us to scan the whole ground prior to construction. At the very least, we're going to miss few spots, and how we're going to tackle that is the issue that we need to think together. All right. Next. So speaking of which, the construction of KLCC is one good example to look at how limestone bedrock is disrupting the process of construction, the foundation construction, where they have to shift the site further 61 meters from the original site because they hit the decayed limestone area. So this is the risk that they have to take when little information is given from the site investigation report. All right. So, and as a result of dealing with weak materials, they have to inject or they have to build with a very thick concrete foundation. A rough foundation is used here. But as you can see, I think this is by far the thickest foundation ever built in the world. All right. So we can say Kuala Lumpur city center is pretty much stable, and we're not really afraid of their, stability after 10 years period. 100 years period. But I'm not sure if later we need to look back into how maybe some part of the limestone, whether they are starting to develop a small cavities or not, because cavities react with water continuously, and from small they will eventually become big. Right. Next. And if we look at Garuda's website, this is something interesting as well. They are now building the Putrajaya line, the MRT Putrajaya line, and they noticed that the complex ground, a geological ground, will impose some significant challenge to their TBM, right, during the tunneling work. Because once they at this concession, what we can notice is that the changes in geological boundaries between the blue, which is the granite. Well, granite we don't really use blue, usually we use green. To Candy Hill Formation, metamorphic rocks, and then the heat limestone is supposed to be blue there. But yes, apparently they will be the TBM machine will be needed to face all these irregularities throughout the tunneling process. And of course, this will rise up the cost of operation because the drill bit needs to be changed every time they hit different material. All right, next. So they even put it in their website here. So you see, the geological is something that gives the project a big challenge. And one of it is coming from the famous limestone, where the karstification is causing the formation of cavern cliff pinnacles under the ground. And this will lead to a big cavities that will cause some significant changes to the shifting system. I mean, the TBM system needs to be shifted according to the materials that they found, and this will delay even more. And they're gonna need to, project what kind of challenge they will be facing next if the ground is changing even more. Next. So, as a matter of fact, I'm just showing you some old picture of Bandar Satway or Sungai Luwe, which shows the ground, the lowest ground at the mine tailings deposited after the tailing operation has ended, and the records of pinnacles of limestone rocks that outcrop from at that particular quarry zone. So you see, the thing about mining area, once they have fully utilized or fully exploited the material, their mindset is now how they're gonna exploit more that area into something else that can benefit them. So Sunway being pretty much intelligent is changing Sungai Way, where's the slide? Into, next slide, Sunway Lagoon. All right. So now they are Sunway Lagoon. So areas where they where slimes and maintaining deposited mold will be mainly used or covered by water, because this area is particularly loose in nature with weak or low bearing capacity. So by right, they are doing the best way is by putting water and turning it into a lake. And I think if we go to Sunway Lagoon, we can still see remnants of limestone rock preserved in Sunway Lagoon. Next. So I think most of people, I mean the younger generation, perhaps they thought the new event of single is just that. But apparently we do have series of big sinkholes before in Kuala Lumpur, and the scale of this sinkhole is immense. I would say that it involves sinkhole as big as 10 meter and even a collapse of low-cost building in Jalan Raja Laut. But I think because it has been, not to say hidden, but no one is really digging into this, so we don't really know about all this anymore nowadays. So next. So if we look into it, why sinkholes happen frequently from 1980s and even until these days? The main thing is that during that time, we are urbanizing Kuala Lumpur aggressively, where lowering of groundwater table is one of the ways to ensure good construction practice. But in return, this has caused some, deformation changes to the soil structure, which causes the soil to exhibit problematic behavior. So, and furthermore, if we can look at those two pictures there, it shows us that most of the materials that build up Kuala Lumpur is either from the alluvium or from the mine tailings. So these two basically is the weakest material that we can deal with, and we really need a very good and strong foundation to ensure that the building can be sound and stable. Next. So this is just a cross section showing how the majority part of Kuala Lumpur is being covered by mine or by slime or and even alluvium and sand, and they covered the limestone body. So we're not seeing that pinnacles of limestone anymore because everything is being covered and buried. But if any contractor, coming into that particular area and wanted to build residential areas, if they miss all this information, then we're going to get lots of issues later, all right? Because the occurrence of very weak and collapsed soil zone that can, collapse immediately or not immediately, maybe 10 to 20 years later after the finish. Next. And this is one of the useful chart that we graph that we can use to see how weak the soil or the weak zone layer is as compared to the rest of the body, the lake soil layers. If we can see here that the SPT value will drop significantly, almost zero, showing very weak bearing capacity. And this is where we know for sure that your soil is either needs to be replaced or some grouting is needed to give some strength back to that particular horizon. But the issues with this area, they are usually covered by a very good soil profile above. And this is given by chemical information with quartzite and phyllite. Quartzite means the most resilient material, even better than typical granite, they have SPT value almost 50. So 50 is, very good enough, very sound enough for a foundation. So if we, but if the thing is, if we foresee the existence of cavity, that rigid layer will be settled once the cavity can no longer sustain, or even or if there's a dewatering process going in. So this is something that engineer needs to, very sure at, and do something in order to not miss this critical point here. Next. Just showing you something why we need to be very careful when dealing with soil is because different type of soil react differently with water. Sand, although allowing much water to penetrate, but they are loose in nature, right? They don't have cohesion built up within the material, so they will loosely or glides against each other easily. Whereas clay, they are really fine and they have some electrochemical bonding with them. They will not allow water to permeate easily, but clay is prone to erosion. So the loss of fine grains in the lower horizon is what causing the lower horizon to subside. And this is what relates to the subportion mechanism that we saw earlier. Next. So if we go into a much more micro detail, we're gonna notice that, the pores in soil is being aggravated if they have very high clay components. And this is what usually left unnoticed by the engineer, because they just look at the nature, the composition wise, but they don't really think about how at micro scale porosity will affect the behavior, engineering behavior of soil as a whole or ground as a whole. Next. I'm going to be very quick now. So in reality, cavity will not only form in limestone weathered soil, but also in soil with dispersion characteristic. And this is a soil with high sodium content. Next. And if we look at this graph, it shows us very clearly that the internal erosion to surface erosion is very much different. And when I talk about the solid soil, it means that the internal erosion or erosion that is initiating from the beneath is much more prominent than the surface erosion. And this does not need any limestone to be present, just a typical soil, sometimes with introduction of sodium. Next. So, do you think this is correct at some point? Next. Of course, it is not. It is impossible for a calculator to be built with this kind of underground condition. Next. So, it's okay about this. I think it has been explained before. Apparently, we have rapid flow of water underneath that particular location. And if we want to put things into good perspective of how soil erodes, we can understand the link between piping erosion, which migrates upwards to the opening of holes and collapse of the soil layer. Next. Next. So apparently, not just the flat area is facing problem, but also slopy area. We've seen cases where landslide happened in Kuala Lumpur, quite a few. And I think most of the area landslide in Kuala Lumpur can be categorized as a man-made failure that happened to an engineered slope. And this is one of it where rapid drawdown slope failure is destroying a row of newly completed double-story link house in Taman Bukit Indah Ceras. And partly is due to the excessive materials of mine tailings left behind by the previous contractor, which not being replaced by the housing contractor and causing problem as such. Next. And also, if we notice in 2012, where we have a landslide at Bukit Setiawangsa from an engineer that has been mitigated pretty well, but apparently they did not design a good mitigation measures. They cannot, fully retain the slope or thick regolith slope with this kind of measures, because you are actually trapping more water in, and you are inducing pore pressure to build up behind the slope, and the recurring of landslide is even worse than before, right? And now the thing is, this part has been remitigated with a different approach. I think it's much better because they allow for water to flow out from the slope naturally. Next. And we do have also SPRM in 2023 and 2020 Sepute. Next. And of course, the famous Highland Tower. And next. And also Bukit Lanjan during the construction of NKVE highway. Next. I can skip this, but that's just how you integrate all these processes into, concluding why ground is behaving weirdly with water and also into ocean. Next. So as a conclusion, I think we need to understand the geology for sustainable development, and then resilient design must harmonize with the land, with balancing progress to preserve KL's natural heritage. So we need to collaborate between geology, architect, environmental science, and many others in order to become to have a one good solution in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Shahidah, for such a very comprehensive and clear presentation on KL geologies and the effects. I mean, if you don't really understand the geology, so there are very clear examples of things that might go wrong. We will keep the Q&A session until the end, and then for those who are online, you can also type your questions now, and our secretary will collect questions and will be asked after three speakers has been presented. So we move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dato Ahmad Fuad Embi, a former Deputy Director General, Department of Drainage and Irrigation. His talk is titled "Washed Away: The Impact of Urban Flooding on KL's Cultural Resources." During his stint as a former deputy, he pioneered sustainable river management and urban stormwater management. He is also a registered professional engineer, as well as a certified professional in erosion and sediment control with Envirosit International Organization. So please, Dato, the floor is yours.
This paper is about trying to tell you, after the introduction just now, I think the President's introductions gave me an idea that this paper will be especially useful for your members, ICOMOS. In future, when you are deliberating on how to look at preservation of cultural monument buildings in future from the aspect of mitigation. Maybe you are needed. Oh no. You know. No. It's okay. Continue. Now, at first I was wondering what do you really want me to look into, because as far as the first title you proposed to me was the impact of flooding on our cultural treasures. So it's quite obvious there's not much to talk about the impact, because obviously when you have a lot of flooding, it will affect whatever buildings, especially if your buildings are made of concrete. You don't have monuments like Borobudur, which are in tropical areas, Borobudur in Indonesia, Java, which are rock monuments. And those things are proof that our international or our world heritage sites, you know, you want to have cultural treasures that last hundreds of years, wow, build them in rock, like Borobudur, or you have the one in Cambodia, called Angkor Wat. So although you have a very highly erosive climate like our what we call it, heavy rains and sun and very strong sun, tropical weather. These are the most erosive weather you can get anywhere in the world. The only way you can get monuments which can stand that kind of climate is obviously to build them in rock. You don't have that kind of monuments in Malaysia, of course. Not in Sabah, not in Sarawak, not in Peninsula. So the only thing you have are the sites, mostly the sites. Now what I'm going to talk to you about is hopefully for you to appreciate that flooding in cities, especially because most of our cultural heritage, if you're talking about maybe 100 years ago, you know, the mother's age kind of thing. You're not talking about a 1,000-year-old castle in the UK or something like that, in France, you know, you're not going to get that kind of thing. Maka, yeah, but the monuments are barely there. You get sites, of course, and maybe you get a few stone structures, but that's all. So, what I'm going to try to tell you is in cities, especially in developing countries, in tropical areas, there is no running away from the fact that you are going to get more flooding and you're going to get increased extent of flooding and you're going to get more frequent flooding. Why? This is what I'm trying to tell you. I've been trying to push this agenda for the last 20 years since I retired. But the present generation of technical people, especially those engineers in the local authority, the engineers in the government services, they are stuck in the same mentality. I went back to my former department, GID, but they don't have the kind of the new kind of approach which is needed. The new kind of approach that is being implemented in developed countries now, even in China. They are talking about smart cities. That's what they're talking about. But the engineers of the present generation whom I manage are nowhere into this field. They are not even bothered. All they are interested in, yes, they are interested in structural solutions. They only think about structural solutions. I don't know why. They don't appreciate the natural approach based. Yeah, that's what they are talking about in developed countries. They are talking about dismantling the huge concrete trails that we have built for the last 30 years in Kuala Lumpur. That's what they're talking about overseas. Here, they are not talking about it. So this is the biggest problem which we face and which you will find we are not alone in this. This is the same problem in all the big cities of the developing countries. They don't have the big group of environmentalists who are pushing this agenda. They don't have. It is mostly in developed countries. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Now the heritage site I mentioned this now. You see, we have heritage sites like our botanic tree. You have Kampung Baru. You have our beautiful sometimes Sulaiman painting. You have our Masjid Jami and so on. You see, and all of these, every single one of these has been affected by flood. And of course, you keep on rebuilding and regenerating the structures and so on. Now, why? Why is it that the floods will keep on occurring? Next. This is a flood before. This flood, you can see that these are not ordinary floods. They come every few decades. Let's say 1926 was one of the worst in Kuala Lumpur. That one was in I don't know which location, but you can imagine. 1926 was one of the biggest. Then 1971 was the biggest flood in Kuala Lumpur. I was my first year elsewhere, of course, not in Kuala Lumpur. So that flood was one of the biggest on record, and we have records. And you can see that about 50 years later, 2021, one of the biggest also. The flood was about more than half a meter. And 1924 also was another. You can see, before it was about every 50 years. And then 1924, 1922, 2024, 2022, and even last year, the floods are almost as bad. So you see, why is this happening, and why is it inevitable next? So I'll give you a little bit of background about what the idea has been doing the last 40 or 50 years in, unfortunately, I'm very sad to say, in destroying the natural rivers of the Klang Valley, especially the Klang River. So before when I first started working in the 1970s, we had the biggest flood ever recorded in Kuala Lumpur in 1971. And that flood flooded the whole Kuala Lumpur. And told us called in the US, called in for help from the US government. And they had this very famous agency, it's no longer there now. It's called the United States Bureau of Reclamation, USBR. USBR is very, very famous for building dams. They have constructed some 100,000 dams in the United States alone. And USBR, do you know that now it no longer exists? Now, for the last 20 years, there is a very big movement in the United States to do what? To dismantle the dams that they have built over 70 years. Why? Why do they want to dismantle huge dams? Some of them very, very big. You talk about 50, 60 meters high. Why is this so? The reason why is because dams actually, no matter how good their purpose they serve, how necessary a purpose is, dams actually disrupt the ecological cycle and they destroy the environment of the river. So they have tried to provide very hard for the environmental, for the biodiversity, for example, fish migrate downstream, upstream, or Dato the salmon migrate upstream, up to the waters of the rivers. And so those rivers that are critical for this fish, they have taken down. And in the same way, because we don't have any records of the river fish in Malaysia that migrate upstream, only nowadays we have some. We have not dismantled any dam because our dams are very necessary. For example, Kuala Lumpur, talking about 3 million people, and you need to provide water supply. But how are you going to provide without the dams? So after the 1971 flood, Nazer went to see the US, and they sent in the USBR. I started working in the mid-70s, and I was attached to the USBR. They sent a team here. And the first thing they did was they said, okay, you have one dam, water supply dam, Klang dam. You need to build 2 more dams. They told us, you need to build a dam on the Kumbak River in the middle there. There are 3 main rivers passing through the circle there, that's Kuala Lumpur. These 3 main rivers are the ones causing all the flooding. Okay? You build a dam, you have a dam there, you raise it up. You raise it up so that you can store flood water upstream. You have to have 1 more dam in Kumbak to store the flood waters for the upstream. And you have to have 1 more dam for the Batu River. So they said, this will solve your flooding problem, or at least prevent a lot of local flooding. Okay, you're talking about river flooding, not flash flooding. Okay? Unfortunately, at that time, the chief minister, Menteri Besar Kebangsaan said, no. You are not going to build any dam on the Gombak River because upstream of the Gombak River is round. It's not federal territory. And there is a big population of villages there, about 4,000 people who are going to be affected. No, I'm not going to allow that. So that dam was shut down. And we did not build the Gombak dam. Because the state has complete authority over land and water. And for Batu Dam, fortunately, there was no such objection. So we built Batu Dam. And this is one of the main reasons why Kuala Lumpur will remain flooded. Because that could not be constructed. Okay. Then, after some time, the floods keep on coming. Small floods, not huge floods, I emphasize. Every few years, they keep on coming. Small minor floods, as they they keep on coming. And of course, everybody says this urbanization really knows for it. And government, Dr. Mahdi told us, do something. You only spend some money. Do something about it. So we started in 1980s. I was there. By the time I was already deputy. And we commissioned some consultants, and they started studying everything. They started putting all kinds of alternatives, saying that we have to have a ring of ponds all over the city. And there are such ponds because they were mining ponds. So that was the main thing. Suddenly, Gamuda came in. And they said, they went straight to Dr. Martin and they told him, we have a brilliant idea. We build a tunnel similar to the only other flood tunnels in the world. There's only one city in the whole world which has got a flood tunnel. Which has two flood tunnels. Symposium. Tokyo has got 20 million population, so it's justified to spend $2 billion on flood tunnels. And Dr. Mother said, we don't have money. And Gamuda told him, we will pay for half cost of the tunnel. And Dr. Mother said, what are you going to get from it? And they told him, we will build traffic tunnel down there, which will cater for traffic 99% of the time. Only 1% of the time it will be used for flood diversion. And Dr. Mother was immediately captivated because this is the only project in the whole world ever until now where there is a flood diversion tunnel and a traffic tunnel which can generate income to. And he straight away told us, we will caught by surprise. Okay. He said, okay, forget about all your projects. Implement this one, that the Gamuda is going to pay for half of it, the government will pay for half of it. 1.2 billion stormwater tunnel. So we built the stormwater tunnel, completed when I was still there. And this is the dam. This is the technology dam. We raised it up by 10 feet to get the flood. This is the Batu Dam. And after that, we started concrete lining everywhere in the city. Every bit of river, we covered it up with concrete. You know why? Because we think that that is a structural solution. Let the water flow very fast go back to the sea as fast as possible. Flood waters. Of course, they didn't solve the problem. Next. This is the flood tunnel. Okay. This is the brilliant, which actually was very brilliant, but it's completely structural. It cost 1.2 billion from the year 2002. Now it will cost 3 billion, maybe 4 billion. There's no more underground. We really under the roof. So this is a very brilliant idea. You have traffic going on the first floor, and the traffic is going southbound on the bottom floor. So this one, you can see, it's so diverse. the flood water from Sungai Kelang, it goes after the city center, diverts into Sungai Kelang downstream. Okay. Even now, the last 20 years after it was completed about 2027, even now, if the tunnel is closed for very heavy rainfall upstream, every time there's heavy rainfall upstream, they divert the water into this tunnel. And it is closed for about 10, 12 times a year now. Every time the tunnel is closed, the traffic will back up right up until the Sungai Pacific. That's how bad the traffic. So this tunnel is actually a very savior for the traffic in Kuala Lumpur. Next. Now, this is how the traffic backs up, you can see. And this is the flood waters. Okay, so now the tunnel is being used more and more frequently. Now this is the second reason why it will keep on increasing, the flash floods especially. The reason is because we have lost the capacity of the soil to soak in the flood waters. Before, when you don't have development, you don't have concrete lining, and you don't have concrete surfaces, you don't have roads, you don't have roofs, you don't have drains which are on top of the ground, which comes in the ground. The rain can soak into the ground. You can see if it is development, the first picture on the left, 25% infiltration. See, when there is 40%, this is the natural ground cover. The second picture on the right, just with 20% development, the infiltration into the ground is only 20%. So you have less and less storage. And at the last one, on the right, 75 to 100% of the surface of the city is covered with impervious concrete. This is what Kuala Lumpur is. It's around 70 to 80% only. Some areas 90% covered, like Subang Jaya. 90% is completely impervious to rainfall. So when you don't have the rainfall soaking into the ground, what happens is that the runoff rainfall falls on the ground, it straight away runs off the drain. When it runs off the drain, it runs into the river as fast as possible. When the runoff within 20 minutes of every rainfall, it starts raising the level of the water in the rivers. You get flash flooding. So this is the second primary reason why we are going to get more and more flash flooding in Kuala Lumpur next year. And this is the reason. You see, Kuala Lumpur and the Klang Valley is built on, and this is the area which I'm including into our lecturers geotech just now and geology, you see. This is why we need to see for us, their perspective, which is the wrong perspective, and our perspective, which is concerning the soil, which is the topsoil, which absorbs a lot of the rainwater. And also from your perspective just now, you mentioned 2014 flood in Kelantan. It was a huge flood, and I tell you, that kind of 50-year flood is going to occur more frequently. Why? Because the whole of Sungai Kelantan catchment has lost the top layer of the soil, which is a topsoil. The whole topsoil in the whole of Sungai, not the whole, maybe 70% of the whole of Sungai Kelantan catchment has lost its topsoil. Do you know why? Kelantan government has been embarking on 30 years of large-scale plantation agriculture in the Sungai Kelantan catchment. Irrigation, and all these smaller rivers of the Sungai Kelantan has been converted into agriculture, and there is no erosion control, no conservation control of the soil. They lost most of the soil. Sorry, I'm going to mention all these details. This is my favorite. Look, you look at the soil for Kuala Lumpur. Should earlier on. All of them have lost their topsoil. You see the bare soil, this is barely above the hard rock. So how can it absorb rainwater? Next. Look, this is Shah Alam Park. Shah Alam Park, which designed by the Japanese architect, landscape architect, 25 years ago for the Shah. Look at soil now. Local authorities do not have the appreciation of the conservation of soil. And they leave the bare soil without cover, without grass cover. Next. And look, this is the third reason. The third reason is we need to do this sponge city concept by planting trees, not by planting trees 10 meters apart, which is a 50-year-old concept, but by planting trees next, like this. You see at the top two pictures, planting trees very, very close together. They call it, you can call it the Miyawaki, pioneered by a Japanese professor. He has been spreading this in about 2,000 sites all over the world. He came to Malaysia 20 years, but nobody appreciated it. You look at our, on the left there, this is Kuala Lumpur now. You look, you have bare exposed soil which are hard and does not permit the infiltration of soil. And you look at the two on the right. This is not in a tropical country. This is London. This is what they have been doing the last 20 years. And this is what Singapore has been doing next. We need this. And we need to plant urban forests in Kuala Lumpur, which is not being done also. Poor awareness. The Miyawaki concept makes the forest grow very much faster, very much denser, and very quickly mature. So this is one thing which you need to deliberate. Hopefully you can look into this aspect next to preserve our own. And this it grows very fast, and it is proven in 2,000 places all over the world. Next. This is what they have. You see, very dense, very dense tree canopy, and they are not far apart like what we have here. Very thin, barely growing trees. Next. Next. And this is what we have identified all over Kuala Lumpur. You see, look at the bare ground that we have, and the grass is very thin, and the grass is, every time they maintain the grass, they cut it to ground level. So how is the rain going to penetrate to the ground? So this is the kind of thing which I am telling you. We need to promote this, but the agenda is still not there. Next. And look at the ground. Look, and you have all over Kuala Lumpur is the same feature, which you will not get in Singapore. Thanks. Now this is the last, I don't have time already. So this is the last thing which I'm going to hopefully emphasize to you. It is not just climate change. You see, climate change is the long-term effects which may come 30 years, 40 years from now, where the whole world is going to experience a 0.5 degree rise in temperature. We are talking about Kuala Lumpur, a highly urbanized area, which is going to experience a few degrees of temperature rise. A few degrees within a few years. In fact, this now increased next. You can see the proof there. This is climate change. Okay? Climate change is different. It is a worldwide effect, and it is caused by greenhouse gases. Okay? We have a lot of this carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases, they call it GHGs, what do you call it? Methane. Okay, next. And it causes a lot of disruption in weather, including extremes in flooding. Extreme, you say you have got extreme flooding in Germany. And this climate change. Okay. And this is what everybody is talking about, including local authorities, including DPKL. DPKL talks about a master plan for climate change. but they don't have this next one. Next, this is urban heat. They don't have this. Why? And Singapore has got a master plan for urban heat. They are in the process of implementing 81 strategies. 81, not one. We have barely one. In Kuala Lumpur. Why? Hopefully, you are the people hopefully to create some awareness. Nobody seems to be interested in this. Every time I go and talk about this in UKM or whatnot, they just look at it. Just look at it. And they're not interested. I don't know why. I don't know why. Next, you see, I know. Cover. You can see this one. I had to go to great length to get the what do you call it? This satellite agency. Right. No. This one agency with remote sensing. Aspect agency. So they converted for me. There's one officer that converted for me. Solar. This is what they call the thermal ground temperature related with the topomat. The green areas, you see how Kuala Lumpur is. That was 10 years ago, before the time. Next. And this effect is called urban heat island. Every time you have building, which is a black building like here, it absorbs sunlight. And the temperature is very high. And when you have high temperature, the building is dark. Building should not be dark. When they are white, they reflect the solar heat. When it absorbs temperature, it radiates it to the ground. When it radiates to the ground, you get all this. You get very large power consumption, you get increase in ozone and chemical reaction. And then this is Kuala Lumpur, our city air quality is always not good. We look at Google, every time our air quality Kuala Lumpur not good. One of the reasons is this. In fact, this is probably the main reason. See, increasing diseases. Nobody seems to be bothered, but it increases diseases. Vector-borne diseases from mouse and cockroaches and mosquitoes, they increase when the temperature of the city is high. Next. Rainfall also increases, and we have this record. Proof that rainfall drastically increases. So if you let the city temperature overall increase, the extreme rainfall is going to increase. And that is why they get more flash flooding. Next. Okay, next. You must have cooler roofs. Next. You must have more greenery in place of that tar. Tar absorbs a lot of heat. Next. And do you know that London has got this land 10 years ago? London, temperate country. They have got these green roofs on top of their buildings, which covers. There is 1 square meter of green roof in London for every person in London. They've got about, I don't know, 2 million population. You've got 2 million square meters. They started barely 10 years ago. This is the plan, master plan. Next. And this is the master plan I told you now for Singapore. Why is it our local authorities have not heard about it? I don't know. I mentioned to the idea, put she's not our area. So that's why I come and hopefully get to some young people who are more interested in this environment and the way our children, the urban environment that our children go to inherit. Why is it that Singapore has got 81 strategies for cooling the city, and Malaysia, DPKL, has got not a single one? We're only talking about master plan for climate change. Why don't they have a master plan for cooling the Lumpur? So, President Mr. President, you hopefully, let me forget about all what I was talking about. So, you remember this? Why is it you're not cooling down Kuala Lumpur? Because it's got severe effects. Next. Yeah. Now, this is what they're doing in Singapore. We went there and took all these pictures. What they have been doing, they have been implementing the last 15 years. And we haven't heard about it. I don't know why. I tak tahu lah apa kena. PDD cuma jadi mayor. Tapi kalau you and President architect, kita ambil dulu. Then you do this next. Okay, sorry. Uneasy proof. This is solid proof. I'm not talking just mere talking. This is solid proof. You look at the years, and we took this from satellite imagery, we converted into land surface temperature. You look at the temperature of Kuala Lumpur, Kelantan, this Kelantan. You look 96, 201, 206, and 2016. This is the temperature of our Klang Valley because of urbanization. It's solid proof. And I have got other pictures showing Singapore, they reverse. They reverse the trend. The trend is like this. This is the trend. Thanks. Hopefully. Okay, so that's it. So in just to complete the story, there are a lot of factors, but these are the very big factors which you hopefully you will look into conservation of our heritage. We need to look into the increasing impact of flooding, which is going to improve and which is going to increase more and more, not just in our urban areas, but also you're talking about this now, because of very poor awareness. Not only politicians, but technical people who do not seem to appreciate environmental aspects. It is a very, very important thing. So thank you very much. Very sorry to
So thank you, Dato, for such a very interesting topics on flooding. So we're going to be taking a 2 minutes break, and we will be back after this for those online viewers. Yes. All right, thank you. 2 minutes break.
Okay, as usual, the last speaker, I will try to go a bit faster to catch up the time. Okay. So, my presentation is a bit more on the personal touch. So when the topic given to me is particularly on fire hazard in Kuala Lumpur. So if you're saying fire hazard in Kuala Lumpur, I'm born in KL. Okay, so a lot of places or buildings I've been there before, and I have certain personal touch or even associations towards the building. Okay. I think most of you maybe have the same thoughts of feelings. So if you look at this picture on the right itself, it's just actually a simple shop houses. And you can see that how big the fire could be to that extent. Okay, you're standing outside, even you're looking at the photo itself, you can feel the heat. Okay. If I go to the next slide, so you're imagining you're inside the building now. Okay, you're even feeling more heat at this point. Okay. Okay, a lot of you may wondering, is it fire is part of the disaster? Okay, yes, if you purely based on this, recall as when an incident that happened in southern manner, and it's complex. Fires always is complex, and it could cause us losses of life, damages of properties, natural environment, and so on. Okay, so with that, there's no doubt. Okay, fire is actually part of the disaster. If you go further a bit on, recall what are the incidents that have been categorized. You can see fire happens. It appears at two areas. So it's part of the disaster. And we are looking at building, which is the structures, and also the people inside when we talk about fire. Okay, if you look at this photo itself, you see you have a very old buildings. Okay, on the left bottom, you have old shop houses. Okay, you can see those are maybe from Jalan Tun, HS Lee. There are some from Jalan Petaling and so on. Okay, there are also some photos showing the first Bank Negara, Maybank buildings. Okay, they are also on the bottom right. Okay, which is the Medan Pasar with the clock tower and so on. Then on top itself, of course, you have the Bangunan Soda Bersama and the Kakosa Sri Negara. Okay, those are the listed heritage buildings. Okay, and You might wondering, hey, how come the KLCC Tower and also the some other building like the Parliament building are here? Okay, when we say heritage building, it may or may not be listed under the act itself. Okay, you must remember that. Okay, first we're looking at whether it's listed building or it's not listed building, and beyond that, they are building like the KLCC is actually fall under the category of 20th century heritage building. Okay. So heritage building doesn't say that oh it must be 19th century or 18th century, even 20th century also can be a 21st also can. 21st also can. As long as they have the certain significance of values. Next. Okay, I won't go into very detail, but this is giving you some idea when you say about old towns. Okay, there are some attributes that we can looking at. Okay, so we talk about architectural style, talk about if you are from the architectural background, you might know what it's all about. Then if you are talking about materials, construction techniques, and so on, those are buildings that built up using traditional method or using bricks, plaster, timber, terracotta tiles, and that even some come with hand-carved detailings, okay, which you might not able to find in these days. Yeah, next. Okay, there are some, we are talking about cultural and functional aspects. Okay, when we say attributes. So you might find that there are shophouses, okay, that have a certain type of typologies for either residential purpose on the top, commercial functions on the bottom, or both commercial on top and bottom. Okay, they are also building with 5-foot walkways. Okay, then we also can look at urban and historical significance. Okay, there are heritage zones like Chinatown itself, Kampong Baru, and so on, with a certain history background of the district itself. And there are some, we are talking about symbolism and ornaments. Okay. Then when the topic talking about charm and itself, what is actually charm and also the depth itself, we can looking at cultural identity, the architectural character, the human skill and workability. When these are the areas, for example, in the old town itself that we can find. You might not able to discover this in the new town or even in the city center like LCC area. Then of course, it could become with storytelling and also memories. Again, story of the city's past, threats, migrations, or there is a conflict, struggles, and so on, and its growth. So in the disaster itself, we also talk about conflicts. And then, of course, we have last but not least on the sustainable urbanisms. So in preserving, or we could repurpose the old buildings for sustainable development. Okay, instead of demolition, we can reduce the demolitions, reduce the voice, and promoting adaptive living and so on. So all these are, you can find actually in the old town. Next. Let's look at the one of the most earlier fire that everybody always talk about is the Great Fire of Kuala Lumpur. It happens on 4th of January 1881. Okay, during that times, most of the buildings are made of woods and also arch. Okay, the streets are very narrow and so on. So when there's a fire happen, it actually spread very fast in the wind. And sometimes it could be spread until the entire row or entire district. Okay. Then of course, um, okay. So during the early time, Kuala Lumpur don't have any specific guidelines. Okay, I try to search and so on, do some research and so on. But somehow I found there is some write-up, okay, that written mentioning that during the September 1881, because of the second major fire, Kuala Lumpur actually happened fire 2 times, okay, in the 1881. So after that, the Selangor State Council actually implemented some new regulations. Okay, they try to ban, not to say fully ban, but this to avoid using a lot of wooden shophouses. okay, establish a certain standards that there must be a certain spacing between the buildings, certain materials that's non-flammable and so on. So from there, it started to have bricks. Okay, you can notice that when an incident happen, especially fire happen, they actually come with something. Okay, so these are the first few rows of the brick shop houses. Okay, nearby the Medan Pasar. Okay, of course, it's built by Yak Alloy in the records. And after the incident itself, actually, Yak Alloy opened up another new opportunity. Okay, to have bricks, what you call factories at brick fields. Okay, it's a very good businessman. Yeah, sometimes disaster could be a bad and good. Okay, okay, you look at it. So let's look at this picture itself. Okay, and you look at the old plan, old map itself at dated 1895. Okay, you can see that there are a lot of solid buildings that's been coming up. Okay, if you look at the dates itself, you can roughly know that they actually do have certain implications. Like you can find that there is a lot of old buildings that started to use facing bricks during that period, the 10 or 20 years of period of time, because there is the introductions of the battery, brick battery and so on. And of course, this is one of the incidents on Central Market. Okay, Central Market was constructed 1888. Okay, during the time, the entire building is actually majority part of it is actually made of wood. Okay, and there is a fire happen. Okay, next. So when the fire happened, it actually burned out the entire buildings, and the current Central Market is actually reconstructed. Okay, using bricks. And of course, if you can recognize this is the Central Market at the bottom photo. If you go further a bit, you can know that there's another Central Market before this. Okay, which is it could be much more prominent if the building was still around. Okay. Then same goes to Royal Selangor Club. Okay, a lot of us we may realize that Royal Selangor Club is all the while there as it is, but we didn't know that there is a fire happened before. Okay, it started with the kitchens at the club itself, and then it burned on the main portion of it, and then they actually struggle whether they want to restore certain area or not. Okay, they have decided to whether go to another place to build another one and so on. But at the end, after certain negotiations, they decided to restore the main portion of it. Okay, next. Okay, I will go a bit on the cinema itself. Cinema also a lot of things that giving us a lot of memories. Okay, especially I'm not trying to say that I'm that old. Okay, but I can recognize all the cinemas like Rex, Federal, Cathay, Odeon, Capital, and Public and so on. Maybe my parents is always like to go to cinema. That's why I say I have a certain personal touch. Okay, next. Okay, the Rex KL itself. Okay, this is a old building. Of course, I didn't really able to see this building. Yeah. Yeah. This building was totally destroyed during the fire in the 1972. Okay, I haven't gone yet. Okay, of course, next.
You're last.
I'm not that old enough. Okay, so this is much more recognizable.
You join how many lah? You are vital to like follow
This is much more recognizable. Okay. So you can see, I think if you are long enough staying in KL, you could recognize this.
Yeah, like him.
Yeah. And then you can see at the photo at the bottom there, it's actually a very busy area. Then you will find that a lot of people that go to KL because although we are so-called we are born in KL, but we are not actually living in the KL city center. Okay, and there are not really a lot of cinema at our housing area. So when you want to go to see movies and so on, we have to take a bus, go to the Clan bus station, and then drop, and then go to the bus cinema. Okay, of course, when say the heritage building is burned, it's not just the physical structure that is actually lost, the intangible part. Okay, when you say cinema, it's much more giving you the stories, okay, the memories that you have. Okay. Like for example, for Rex itself, it's the first cinema that having a digital sound processor during that time. Okay, and of course, it's one of the largest capacity. After the first fire incident, they actually uh, build it again up to 1,100 seats. Okay, with the balcony sections. Okay, if you don't know what is the balcony sections, you're not old enough. Okay, it's a special seat. Okay, okay, go to the next one. Okay, there are several next popular movies that you've been through. Even there are celebrations for Merdeka, they're giving free tickets and so on. So those people that went through those years, they actually have a certain type of personal touch. Yes. Of course, subsequently, Rex KL has been converted to a hostel during the year 2007. Okay, after they operate for several months, again, the building caught fire. Okay, so this building actually caught 2 times fires. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah, nice. Okay. The incident quite serious because when we converted into a hostel, there are a lot of foreign visitors that actually stay inside the hostel. Okay, and a lot of news has come out compared to the first one. Okay, next. Yep, there are more and more reports. Okay, of course, during the report itself, we're talking about in that building there is actually no fire alarm system, there's no fire suppression system during the whole time. Okay, this is some process. Okay, if you see the process itself, so it's actually like 25 years, 4 years, 25 plus a bit, 5 years, and so on. So it's not saying that there's a pattern, but somehow when you're using the building itself, you must ensure that the building is actually safe. Okay, if you are continue to use, especially those buildings are not people that occupy that is what you call permanent people. They are not used to it. Okay, like cinema, you are not people that stay inside the cinema. You're going once a while for movie, as well as hostel and so on. So you have to be very careful when dealing with this kind of buildings. And of course, last is on the renovated for art and craft cultural building now. Very good. Okay, so if you look at these photos, okay, you still can see the marks of the fire burn on the wall. Okay, of course, you can on the top right, on top of it, that's the balcony sitting. Okay, next. Okay, next. So of course, there are more things happening now inside the buildings. Same goes to their audience cinema. They also having fire before. Yes. Okay, another fire that happened is actually on the Bangung Bandaraya. So this one also happened 2 times. One is in 1992, the other one is 2021. Okay. Then of course, campus shopping complex. So this is the oldest surviving mall at the moment, and of course, it's quite popular because that time is the highest building with shopping mall in KL during that period. And when the fire happens, it actually caught a lot of attention. Okay, how to deal with it on this kind of buildings. Okay, let's go to a much more smaller scale building. Okay, this is one of the 2 shop houses at the Jalan Sultan. Okay, there are some photo. Okay, this fire actually happens and it spreads. Okay, if you go to the next You can click on it. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. If you realize this building is actually at the turning of Jalan Sultan. Okay. At this point of time, they are after they restore the building, then they reuse the building. They are one of the very popular space. If you know the Lanzhou ramen over there, so they are doing very well. The Mitare, okay. Oh, Mitare.
Anchovies lah, correct lah.
So again, after an incident, something happened. Okay. Okay, next.
Where they get that?
So this is another shop houses, don't HSL. Okay, it also happened very quite seriously. It also claimed a life of one of the elderly women. Okay, and of course, this one is happened during the daytime. Okay, if you can see the photo at the bottom there, the amount of smoke that comes out from the building is actually a lot. Okay, and you can't even see what actually happened actually behind it. Okay. And of course, not after this incident, the two shop houses has been converted into a cafe. Yes, yes, I also always go there.
Yeah, very nice. Monday makan. Ajak lah. Kita kampung lah. Kampung sekali.
Okay, so this is a photo of the incident. Okay, you can see the part. Yeah. Next. Okay, this is another in HSD. Okay, if you look at the fire itself, you are so you can imagine that if when fire is happened, how the fire going to put on. Okay, when fire at this scale itself, it's actually very easy to destroy. And in the role of the shop process, it could be happen like just now the one at Jalan Sultan, it continued to spread up 5 houses, 5 shop houses. Okay, this is another one also very popular if you are always travel to Chinatown or Darling Streets. Okay, this is the shops that we always go for Chinese New Year shopping. Okay, and if you look at the photo on the bottom, okay, actually the two building haven't been burned yet. Okay, so after it burns, it will just leave it empty like that. Okay, some may use it for car park, some may not going to rebuild or restore anything. So this is something that we need to look into, because when say fire happen, yes, sometimes the impact come with a good restorations. Sometimes it just leave it there. It could be ISO, it could be problems that appear into the whole town itself. Okay. And of course, this shop itself, when we're looking at shop houses like this, are actually selling a lot of Chinese universe merchants, which are highly valuable. So when we say we want to review on the fire risk in the building itself, we also need to look at what are the things inside, besides the building materials by itself. Yeah. Okay, here there are some of the old records, the table itself. Of course, the one that highlighted in red is actually in KL. Okay, there are high courts, national museums, Mauritius. There are some other area like some other museums. Okay, of course, the famous Pak Ali houses. Okay, some in Klang and so on. Yeah. Okay, a bit more details on info next. Okay, on the left side itself, you can see there is a graph that trying to show, giving you an idea that when there's an incident happen 2013 to 2019 itself, there are 27 fire incidents. Okay, the ratio itself, you can look at that. There are a lot happen on shop houses as well as office, which are most of the time are those 2 or 3 stories shop houses or shop offices, and those are heritage building at the old town area. Okay, this is one of the much more latest data that obtained, okay, from Bahagian Penyiasatan Kebangsaan, just for reason from yesterday. Okay, just for yesterday.
Last week kita pernah tahu.
Okay, okay. So there's also recorded another 23 fire incidents, 2016 to 24. Okay, of course, you can see there is a various type of heritage structures or buildings. And then again, we can always look at the highest is always go back to the Kedai or Kedai Pejabat or Kedai's rumah. Okay. Next. Then of course, give us some ideas on some statistics. There are recorded a high number of cases in Penang. Yeah. Okay, this one will be something much more crucial for you to take note on. Okay, based on this record itself, electrical problems is always the main cause of the fire. Okay. After that, we will come together with burning embers and so on. So when we say electrical problems, old buildings are always having the old type of wirings and so on. And whether there has been checked properly or even when they restore, they're still keeping the old wiring and so on. Okay, this one is a map of KL. Okay. So I just try to mapping. Okay.
Fire bombing.
This mapping is just a draft mapping. Okay, if it could be something to be further studied and developed on, we can identify where are the location of the old town and what is the cost, of course, together with the years. Okay. And next. And if you look at those photos, I try to extract out some. If you look at the back, bottom there, the KL before and after, they start from timber houses to bricks. Okay, and then of course on the bottom, after fire incident, it will leave it empty. Then on top of it, on the racks, they change the design. Okay, after the fire incidents. Then of course the central market itself, from a very nice timber towards a new concrete and bricks. And of course the same goes to the Royal Selangor Club. So from this picture itself, you can see, fire, once it happens, there is an impact. Whether you're going to rebuild it, sometimes you rebuild with a totally different, whether the structure that you build giving you the same touch or not. Okay, you might feel differently. Okay, if you are not went through the buildings, might be different. You might feel that, it looks very nice for the current central market. But if you have went through the old central market that built totally with timber, it might be different. Okay. Next. Okay. Okay, these are some of the lessons learned. Okay, we're talking about vulnerability of the heritage structures. Okay, the importance of the fire safety system we have to look at. And there's a need of regular maintenance and inspections. And last but not least is a balancing preservations of safety. So of course, in Malaysia itself, currently we are purely referring to the bylaws, okay, to the Fire Services Act itself, and also the Fire Protection Guide. Okay, and in the Fire Services Act itself, a lot of people may not be aware that the owner of the building has a responsibility to ensure that the property is safe, okay, in a very low risk of fire, and also the safety of the occupants and so on. And if it's a commercial building, they have to get the fire certificates for yearly inspections. Yes, there are some other guides and also references talking about fire and also the heritage itself. Okay, here are a very draft, a little fire risk assessment. But of course, in fire risk assessment, one thing you must remember is not one checklist you can apply to all the buildings. Okay, you always have to understand what is the type of buildings, who are the occupants, okay, and of course, what is the purpose? Okay, sometimes the building could be designed differently, but the purpose, the usage could be different, and as well as you need to know who are the people that use the building. Okay, this is very important. From there, you will know how to assess what is the level of the risk of fire itself. Of course, trainings, understanding. Okay, heritage building must be, when we say heritage building, must use reversible interventions. But you must remember, fire damage is never reversible. Okay, so when a heritage building is destroyed by fire, how much of its cultural and historical value is lost? What next? We restore, we authentically reuse, or just leave it as a car park? Okay, charm should not come with the cost of charcoal, and charm never come with the cost of life safety. And last but not least, we truly value the heritage building, the streets, the towns, but we must protect them not just from the time, but also from the flame. And water. And water. And force. That's all from my side. Thank you to Ahmad
for very presentation of fire and as well as this. So now, I mean, we are slightly behind the schedule. I think we do have now it's actually question and answer session. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience online. So whoever wants to ask questions, I mean, the one in the room.
Can I start there?
Yes, please. So
There's two observations. One is on Dato's talk about smart city. I totally agree with you, Dato. I actually left the MGBC because they were concentrating on rainwater harvesting instead of groundwater recharging, which I felt was ridiculous in that tropical equatorial climate. So I totally agree with you about sponging and things like that. In fact, in one of our projects in Malacca, the Manipal Medical College, we actually have all our drainage on a swale system with soakaways at irregular intervals. And soakaways at regular intervals. But unfortunately, somewhere about 20 years later, they actually replaced that with conventional drains because soakaways need maintenance. That's the problem. That's one thing. The other comment is on what I feel is a misnomer about timber buildings. A lot of people think that timber is a fire risk. It's not. Properly designed timber buildings are can actually last longer. Like a lot of the old temples do not actually catch fire because the Chinese temples, because the protective covering that they use is actually fireproof. Although they don't look very fireproof when they are in the process of fixing. The other thing is that when I was a student, I had a project designing a bookshop in the middle of Canterbury, which is all timber houses. And in my engagement with the fire brigade there, they do fire risk assessment, not deemed to satisfy conditions. He says, number one, yours is a bookshop. And the planning system in UK is that you change of use, you must go for planning permission. Because the use is very important. This is something that we forgot. Because a bookshop, books don't burn. You all think that paper burn, but books don't burn because the density of books is so heavy. It just can't. And this takes back to my first experience with evaluating timber buildings for fire risk as a practicing architect in Malacca. In the late 90s, late 80s, I was given the opportunity to propose a adaptive reuse for a pair of very large townhouses in Given Street. And so happened that time the Director General of Fire Department is an old friend of mine from Malacca. And he says, why don't you go see our work? Nobody want to touch that project. He was referred to HQ. And then when he was referred to Dr. So said, why don't you go and see our work? He's an old man from the kampung. He understands timber. He should be able to give you common sense approach to evaluating this. And Ahmad went through the whole construction system. He said, what are the size of your timber barriers of the floors and roof? I gave him the measure drawings of the building. He said, your timber barriers are 8 by 6. What did your engineer say you need for that? My engineer said you need 4 by 2. He said your charring factor alone, and then he got the thing. It was actually merbau, contrary to what everyone think about Chennai or Kuala. That timber joist was actually merbau. He said based on the density of the timber, the charring factor will stop the fire. It will not allow the timber to lose its structural integrity in the 4 hours that you need for the structural protection. Simple common sense approach. And this is where I think this is the common layman on the street who always think that timber means fire. It's not necessary. You can design a timber building. By the way, the bookshop I designed in Canterbury was all timber. But I oversized the timber I didn't protect the timber. I oversized all the timber. The fire brigade is happy with it. This is I think something that there are practical solutions to this thing. Then Ahmad says, okay, the next one is your floors. You have timber floors. It says timber floors. Simple. I don't know whether it's codified now, but you say timber floors, your timber floors are 1 inch. Okay, you will have to replace it with 1 inch if any of them are rotten. But it says fire usually start burning from the bottom. So I must have you to protect the bottom of the timber floors. You give me a solution. And prove to me that it works. I'm happy with it. I think later on they come up with timber retardant paint, which actually like fire retardant paint on timber, which is kind of awful looking stuff. But what my point here is that steel and concrete are not the solution. I've seen concrete buildings under fire crack because the flame was so intense, the steel bar expanded and cracked all the structure. But of course, a lot of fire protection philosophies are based on hitting the integrity of the structure, protecting the integrity of the structure long enough for you to evacuate your people. I think that because we all keep talking about timber being a fire, it's not necessarily so. And timber being not lasting. Ting Temple, the last replacement of all the timber was 400 years before it actually collapsed. With proper detailing and things like that, the timber actually lasts that long. I think that proves the case that timber is not necessarily destructive. the 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 Forbidden City, the main hall of the Forbidden City, it was burned down about 5-10 years after it was built. Yongle period. Then it was replaced. Then it was burned down again. Then it was replaced. Since that replacement, it has never burned down. And it has lasted what, about 500 plus years. So timber not being a durable product, building material is another myth that is, I think, is urban legend. It all depends on how you use it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one question, I think, from Mr. Idzwan. Okay. The question, I think, is directed to Dr. Fuad. Green roof technology has been around for a very long time and applied largely in Europe. New synthetic structures, which we use weights of green roofs, have also been developed since the 1980s. Despite the benefits we know from green roof, for example, rain sponge, rainwater harvesting, cooling climate, and etc., why are we still not applying it in our building designs?
He's asking that question also.
You want me to answer?
Yes, yes.
This is exactly what you were saying just now, because we just don't have people in the local authorities, because our culture in our authorities is that everything is top down. Top down. What the boss says counts. The young fellows who are more aware about this kind of new approaches just don't have the way to get through to the top. And the top are always, they have the same old traditional approach. Like what I was saying just now. This you talk to all the local authorities now, they are barely in the know. About environmental things, about nature-based approaches, even smart city. Shah Alam asked us to do a study on how to get the smart city to Shah Alam. And we went to Think City in Penang, just to get them, we brought the team. In fact, the team came from Shah Alam to dialogue with Think City Penang, because Think City Penang is the most, shall I say, the most up-to-date on this kind of approaches. They were trying to inculcate this fun city concept into Penang also, as far as I know. So Shah Alam was trying to learn from it. But when we were there, the dialogue completely went out of the way. They were different. They said, I'm just trying to see here. The problem is that every division in the local authorities, I don't know whether it is the present unique to Shah Alam or whatever, every division is protecting its own turf, the division wants to spearhead their agenda, this division, this engineering. So engineering division somehow, I don't know, so it is different. And if the boss, the mayor, now you have mayors all over the cities, you have mayors everywhere. If the mayor is not really into this, then tak jalan. So the short answer to that is, the reason is, you must get, we see why London is so advanced in this green roof concept, because the mayor, that what's the name, that Pakistani fellow? Sir, not Sir. Pakistani mayor. He was the one who pushed the agenda. Yes. So, if you talk about culture in Malaysia, the reason why the cities are not into this green roof thing, if you get a mayor who's really into this, like the city mayor, he will push it down. He will make the legislation, or introduce legislation which enable the builders, the local architects, including the developers, so that they benefit when you build in buildings which have got green roof. Singapore has got that. All the legislations encourage. They give incentives. They give tax loopholes, that kind of thing. So because of our top-down approach, if you don't have mayors like that, there's a short answer.
Well, one of the response by Aisha is that he works with architects to propose green roof on the project, In Putrajaya 30 years ago, it was shut down because the QS said it will increase construction costs. I don't
But the long term benefits we don't see.
Yeah,
Because
because maintenance cost is less. That's about it.
Yes.
We tend to be more energy efficient.
And you save a lot of money on the aircon.
Yep.
But of course, if the mayor overrules it, apa kita? So the mayor said, I nak ni, betul ini bro. Habis kita. Yeah. This is the way in Malaysia, everyone is the boss.
Maybe it's time for ICOMOS Malaysia to visit Mayor of KL.
I will go along.
All right.
Dato, on the delegation. Membership form to leave first.
Okay. There is a question. Is it under the perception? Is there a risk that flood mitigation efforts in KL are prioritizing commercial interests over the protection of our historical heritage? What was, the situation when you were as a DG that time? Reflecting back, do they care about historical heritage in KL, or is just
100% agreeable with that. Because you know why? The reason that they are favoring this commercial interest is very obvious. The latest disastrous announcement which we fought so hard. I went to walk all the way to the land office. They were trying to de-gazette the ponds. All the ponds. You know why? They wanted the developer to come in and build above the ponds. I said, you know how much we paid for this? 1,000 ringgit per square foot. 1,000 ringgit per square foot. And if the people are aware about this, we went to protest. And they agree with us. I will say who. They agree, yes. Okay, we will make sure that this one is not carried through. 2 months later, they degazetted part of the pond. So this is obvious, very obvious. Now, why are the higher authorities in favor of degazetting the ponds which the government and the Rakyat paid so much to preserve? And all the ponds are disappearing. Because why? Because the developer is coming in with, I don't know what commercial benefits to the Bandaraya. They don't see the benefits of this, which are costing a lot of cost to the Rakyat. So they said exactly true. Commercial interest, you want to call it whatever. It's commercial interest. Developers coming in with all kinds of, I don't know what reasons. And the Bandaraya is, you talk to the minister, you talk to the mayor, I don't know what is happening. They should never touch the ponds, but the ponds are disappearing. If the ponds are disappearing, apa yang tidak ada? These are the huge ponds that we carefully preserve. Developers coming in, and with development, more impervious. Where is this? Bring to the ground.
If I can just add to that. Yeah, sure. I think we have a lack of commercializing historical buildings. They could be a function. It is a circular economy to reuse those buildings and materials rather than building new. So I think this question talking about commercialization versus heritage building is because new buildings. What if those adaptive reuse is coming to historical buildings? I think there's a lack of knowledge, and most of the time it's either institution and don't know what else. But in Singapore, commercialization of historical buildings is very, very trendy now. It's very expensive per square foot. It's a pricey possession over there. But now, if this happens in KL, I think then it wouldn't be a discussion commercialization versus heritage. I think that's wrong. But it's a quick question, Binti. I have some question myself.
Please.
Yeah. So I was sorry. I'm not very famous, but I am Celia from Binti. It's a rare occasion to show my face, but I found time. Yes, this is a very interesting topic. I thank ICOMOS for holding timely on rocks, which is sinkhole, and then also on the flood and fire, 3 resilient topics. So I have a question on the rock, but I think the lady. One on the flood. So we talk about just now the rocks on geology on the new construction. Now I then wonder what's happening beneath the old buildings. Like Sultan Abdul Samad has been sitting on the Confluence River. It's one of the oldest structure in KL. With all the constructions, moving the soil and so forth, I then asked the team, do you think there's a sinkhole under there? Not because it was on something, but because of the movement of the soil, the rocks throughout the years, and also erosion, right? It's next to a river. So then I asked myself, is there something that we can check or prevent under a historical building? Maybe it's a very rare occasion, but I have no idea whether this is possible, right? So this is one. And then she showed the formation of the Kenny Hills, granite. I wonder how much of that still is around. Are those the safest foundation? Or maybe 90% of KL are on granite. The Kenny Hills, I don't think is that big. And then the granite, I don't know how many percent is left, or beneath the ground. So can we say KL is 80%, soil that are not completely solid? And how that poses question to us. This is just based on my imagination. I don't have any knowledge on the rocks. I'll give you first, and I'll
Thank you for the questions. The first is we have to when you want to what you call search some things that you want to know, you have to look at the majority of the pictures. But in KL, that's actually well involved in simple states. Also the latest one is the picture I see. Actually in KL, 70% of the KL areas is sitting on the Kenny Hill. It's not actually formed to we call simple. But you have to differentiate between simple and subsidence. Okay? Simple is due to the limestone quality, but subsidence due to the telling sand as mining lands. This is the what we call the key areas. What happens actually is a human. I think in this because I'm from the Kebangsaan. Before I become a lecturer, I'm a trainer for University. So the problem is it's not about because of the humans. You see, when you design, so on paper is everything is nice, This is the true story. See, I'm being involved on the forensic and same like Highland Towers. On paper, everything is okay. I think Dato will agree with me. Everything is okay. BQ1, but when you execute, so if this sometimes like this one in KL, whether you use the materials, is it follow the BQ or not? See, that's why first when you then the inspection, the site investigations, whether if want to on this area like the Putra Mall, we have what we call 1,000 of boreholes, so then you can work good models. But whether in some cases, it's about the integrity with only hundreds, but you claim 1,000 boreholes. See, this is example, the integrity, even though in the highway. See, the problem is it's not really on the geology. The geology is there. That this then as engineers, as architect, the function of each of the rocks. For the limestone, what the function? It is prone to sinkholes. For the telling sand, what's the function? It is prone to subsidence. This is what we call it the integrity. For me, like KL, when we design, if we follow the best practices, it's not you can. You can. The problem is whether you know the issues or not. If you know you can tackle issues, then it's okay. See, but if you know the issues, but during the execute, then this is a problem. Same like when I'm in Australia and when I'm in Russia 20 years back. Dato, waktu tu kami buat ni bincang pasal yang when you pre-structure on the river,
Actually, as a professional, you have to tell the truth. That time, still APS not agree that when you build a structure in a rail, LRT tu, atas tu, sebab apa? When you build something, itu tu nak widen, so that time, when the flooded flooded again and again, so then Prime Minister that time asked, why is it? Then that time, JPS again je ada. That means something that's from the Wahyu lah. That means for me, it's very important to the professional to maintain their professionalism. Macam Dato cakap lah, lebih atas kan, you kata okay. Buat macam like me, kalau saya cakap, probably from the technical point of view kan, 75% of KLs kan sitting on the planning informations. But there is a subsidence or sinkholes due to human use. Macam dekat KL kan, because of the constructions. See, this is the saya nampak banyak yang when our forensics due to the integrity. So if you see when you to build something, you have to prepare. One is when the issues. So when you dealing with the limestones, so how many money they have you to for the designs? So then you have to ready your comprehensive investigation. So whether you want to shifter or you want to ground or you want to dewatering. So this is these issues that we have to tackle between geologists, engineers, and architects. But what happens during the execution? I'm a tunnel geologist, I'm a chemical geologist before I joined the government. Then how we tackle a program dam? One pole, we spend about 30,000 bags. Only one pole. Even though we dealing with the granites, see, one pole, we spend 30,000 bags to grout it. After grout, you have to pull back. See, whether that's at that stage now. But the problem now is the integrity. For me, is about the issue of the integrity. You must know the technical sides, but the education is very important.
Comment. See, during the construction of the smart tunnel, we lost one tunneling machine, one whole tunneling machine. Each one costs about 220 million. We lost one whole tunneling machine. You know why? So that one is actually proof that the rock formation under the Kuala Lumpur, that particular stretch, is actually very fractured material. The rock is very fractured and not as solid as what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about the, what do you call it, the foundation, Canning. So also it's proof of your contention that is now. You're saying they did not want to spend enough to take precautions. For example, they could have spent more money on exploring the area and so on, putting in more crowd or whatever. So because of this reluctance to spend more money, any developer will try to save as much as possible. So it's obvious what you say. So the reluctance to unnecessarily spend more money. That is yes.
Even though when you deal can hit. So can hit a fracture.
Yes.
So you have a one assignment for zone. See, then you have to spend more money.
Yeah. So we try to save as much as they can. As a result, suddenly they lost one whole machine, which cost 250 million. I don't know who bought the cost. It just collapsed. The whole tunnel disappeared.
When you do shadings, then you can have you have kind of what we call a collapse zone,
So Dato, the Science Army building, just off, is it down to Nazer? That one is on the Canning Hill formation.
Yeah, Canning Hill and Canning Hill is about the formation. What is the content of the Canning Hill?
This is something. This something I knew because associate company of my former employer was building Science Army building, and then they were doing the piling. It was everything from foundation to building. when during the flooding, the past disappeared. All the past disappeared. Correct. So later they did a more thorough. This is where I think your money first or your money later.
Yeah.
It's money you have to spend. I felt that if you have some more investigation, they could have probably foresaw that there's this kind of problem. But because all the past disappeared, they did more investigation, they spent more money. They found that they cannot change the design anymore because the parliament was 80% completed. Only that section disappeared. And then they found in bentonite to, you know, the amount of bentonite that found in, cost a lot of bomb.
Yeah, I give you some. Can I end up? One question. One question. Because I'm a geologist of Sabah, see. One question example at the Beverly Hills, the housing schemes, after 20 years. You see, you have to know whether you dealing with the planet, so that means the intrusions massive. When you dealing with the metamorphic one, there is a bedding on that. So when you pass, the bedding like this. So you have a computers and shells, I mean soft rock like a clay, Then you pass here. So the bedding not like this, but like this. See? So this one your housing. See? You pass here. No, what is loose? No point. So after 20 years, this sections becomes collapse.
Actually, that one,
Even though
that situation is kind of big.
even though in your play,
They could have actually built like what Binti, KLCC. They built a glass foundation, part on either side, build a rough foundation span. Even though where sometimes money spent, thing is better than money spent.
it's that money. You have to project your profiles exactly. What happens previously, nowadays when we have a board of geologists, I'm a chairman of board of geologists, previous days, only based on the general geology, not what it called accurates. Just what it called limestone, but the orientations, whether you know or not. Detail investigation. We have to what it called treat the civil works as what we did in mining. Then you can have a good result. Like now, we talk about red earths, that Dato, your profile tadi, for me, the way I look, is rich of the red earths, which are new wealth to the country. So how we have to treat what we did in mining. Even what we call very comprehensive, then we get the money. But in this case, we have to treat since what we did in mining. Then you can have a good results. Yeah.
Celia, do you have another question for
Yes, I know maybe partially been answered. It's always a discussion between a sponge city versus a structural, mitigation for flood.
solution?
Yes. One is more explored than the other. Okay, I have to say that smart city is a fairly new concept for many.
Oh no, not really.
This part of the world, this part of the world and our PBTs, because they have not executed it, they don't have enough evidence on the cost effectiveness and also the resources that it can, prevent. Maybe a big drainage, a big pipes and all that has been implemented over the years. Then they will have multiple scenario of worst flood cases, and based on that, in different PBTs, and they will build the different sizes and whatnot. After all, such embarkment is actually very costly. It's a very costly undertaking infrastructure for flood. Now, I think my question is very simple. I think you have the answer, and I'm not an expert. I want to validate your answer against one I understand. I'm not going to say mine because it's going to be flawed. Which is more expensive and effective? Is it a combination solution or sole of either one? Structural versus sponge or combined, or how do you do it? I think I need someone with a long experience looking at abroad and Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I did not have time to explain to you all why the smart city concept is totally there is very poor understanding of the smart city concept in our local authorities. You see, the way they maintain, I show you pictures just now of bare soil exposed in green areas. You see, every local authority has got green areas. And these green areas are usually parks, roundabouts, or road shoulders. And they will plant these scattered trees and whatnot. You see, they don't understand that you cannot allow the soil to be compacted. These green areas, most of the green areas in Kuala Lumpur, in Petaling Jaya, in Shah Alam, most of the green areas are very poor infiltration areas. Why? Because the soil has been compacted. When clay is compacted, it is not much different from concrete, not much different from the road. Why? The reason is these people, they don't understand that when you cut the grass to ground level, you expose the soil. When you expose the soil, you just go to this classic example is KLCC. We got a beautiful park there, but nobody seems to understand that the park is seriously eroding. You know why? Because they cut the grass to ground level. Every time they cut the grass to ground level, I don't know why. Because they don't understand. You must not cut the grass lower than 2 inches. And this is the standard in developed country. You go to US, you go to UK, especially UK. UK is very, very environmental. You go to Germany, they never cut the grass below 2 inches. But here, everybody cuts the grass to ground level. So this is one simple example. Why? Because of this, they don't have a sponge thing. They don't have a sponge area. This green area is supposed to absorb water. But when you allow the grass to be cut like that, the soil becomes compacted. Because once the rain hit the clay, it washes away the fines. Fines are sand material, silt material. All the minerals get washed away, and you get clay. Once you get clay, it gets compacted. And after that, the water just washes away. So this is what's happening in KLCC. So I pointed that out at the conference. The landscape people, they don't understand it. Unless they caught it, but they don't think it's that important. So this is a sort of thing happening. So it's not costly. It is not costly. They have to change their maintenance of grass. But this is not happening. DBKL, Shah Alam, PJ, all are cutting the grass to ground level. So this is very simple thing. You can have a smart city.
Dato, if we bringing up the same example of Singapore maintenance of also
Yes.
You know why Singapore still use bawang grass, which is what we call cow grass? Because cow grass you do not cut to the bottom.
Yes.
You cut it regularly, but you cut it at about 1.5 inch to 1 inch high.
It must be 2 inches. That's the rule.
So they usually cut about 1.5 inch, because once they cut in half inch, in half a day, our type of weather,
Yes.
the thing shoot out.
Shut up.
And then that's why you go when you drive around Singapore, you see all the grass area are nice and green and there's no bare patches.
Yes.
And in UK now, and in UK, there's now a concept of opening, planting lawns, not with grass, with meadow seeds. And they don't cut it.
Mixture. Not monoculture.
Mixture of grass.
Yes.
And they don't cut it lower than 1 feet.
Yes.
And you can walk across, no problem. You can walk across
You have all kinds of bushes. This is like
wildlife.
yes, biodiversity. So now all over Europe, the catchword is biodiversity. And here there's no such talk here. So this is why you must bring a delegation to the mayor. Minister to visit to the mayor.
Ask one, sorry.
I was just going to ask Dato to comment on River of Life. We spend so much money on the River of Life. 1.4 billion. We spend so much money on River of Life.
I tell you, it's a disaster. Because the big fellas who are making the decisions, I don't know, they're not into this kind of thing.
I think that would be a very interesting topic by itself.
Yes, Tapi they're looking at it as a blame kind of thing, so not one.
Actually, somebody will make a lot of noise.
Yes, yes. And we must create this awareness now. This what everywhere they are talking about all over the world, and we are not aware about it.
In the context of trying to mitigate that.
Yes,
But not as a topic.
yeah. But you can see the other benefits, like what you say, is the smart city. The smart city comes in because your green areas are no longer acting as sponges. So it's a very simple thing. It doesn't cost you money. You just change the way you maintain the grass, change the way you maintain the trees. Why don't you plant more trees there, closer together like here? And those concepts, and we ask them, we ask them, why don't you plant the trees like the Miyawaki thing? The professor came here 20 years ago. He was very interested. One of the first countries they approached is Malaysia. You know why? Because Tuan Mahathir was very close to Japan, those days, in the year 2000. So Professor Miyawaki came here, but he was so poorly, asked him to go and talk to forestry department. So they went to implement a small area near the hutan, somewhere near the forest, to implement the Miyawaki concept. Whereas it is meant for the urban jungle. And Singapore implemented it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's still opportunity to actually.
Plenty opportunity.
People apply together with the sponsor. Yeah. They can do a study to integrate that.
Yeah, our green areas are still there, but it is not acting as sponges anymore.
Okay.
Singapore is how they even clean the trees. And it's
Yes.
just the canopy,
Yes.
rather than like just.
Yeah.
With the little landscaper, oh my God.
Basically, how you approach it rather than just plonk it as
I think
per
Dato make it very clear. It's in the implementation. The ideas are all there, the knowledge are all there, but the implementation is wrong.
I mean, everything is here already, but it's how you do it.
So that's your answer. Actually, there's no extra cost.
You don't
You
have
only save money.
Why a new area?
You only save money.
$1,000 to try to doing it.
A difference between like 36-story building and 4-story building, 7-story building in the heart of KL, whereby when we went to penetrate the columns, etc., so the foundations, when we hit the various different levels, it was difficult for the contractors as well as the engineers, because sometimes they had to re-engineer when they hit the crust level. So everything had a different layer of penetration. So that was how sometimes the foundations become more expensive, and it was EOT, etc., at the basements, etc. It was apparent even for a shorter building, So and it took such a long time because sometimes if people were very concerned about it, then you will find them taking the spending time to calculate, do whatever, etc., to make it stable. Because we are at various level area where the various crust levels are at peaks and troughs, etc. In Singapore, I had done a building there, whereby we had done we were on top of a hill, but we managed to hit Jura level. When we hit Jura level, we managed to do a foundation, which was a rough foundation, and it was stable, etc. That one was like 21-story building, etc. So it is not what you have, but how you actually spend time or have the energy to make it work.
Thanks, ma'am. I think we're sorry.
Actually,
Yeah.
one is
Okay, short answer.
yes. Sorry. COVID didn't happen that long ago. And it's almost like we forgot lessons learned. I know in the UK, one of the things they're doing is they're planting wildflower birches on the roads. And so you get these beautiful, actually colorful birches, road birches. So it's one thing that
when during COVID, when there was this, the whole city went back to the wild in that sense. So when you talk about biodiversity, when you talk about actually having a backyard garden, where you have all of these, rather than cutting down to your level. So it's just one of the things. It would be nice if we remembered those lessons from COVID. But I wanted to ask, and actually to sort of draw all the three together, because when we're talking about heritage areas, all of these impacts, whether it's fire, whether it's water, whether it is because of soil, when we're looking at the buildings we work with, and city areas, this is something that I feel that we kind of need to look at it as well within a rural landscape, which we kind of forget about. Although, because within the rural landscape, there's much more, shall we say, open space. But within historic city landscapes, and Lengkong is one place I'm thinking about, is we also then tend to overbuild because we have this issue of tourists or whatever, so it's not just a question of sort of bringing these lessons to our city environment, but it's also taking these lessons within our historic rural environment. And it is the canalizing of rivers, which affects everything, and the straightening of rivers, which actually, I'm afraid, adds to and aggravates to the problem. So it's just a comment, because that's something that I've observed in terms of working with the project that we're currently working with, and we look at the river every day at the confluence of the Klang and Gombak rivers, and it's one of the things that we noted when it rains, what happens to the river, and when River of Life was being dealt with, just to end, was being in the middle of, it was almost completed construction. My daughter did marine biology, and she does biodiversity and all sorts of things like that related to environment. And I had to meet somebody who asked me to go and look at something within the River of Life project. And so I left. I said, okay, she'd come with me, and I said, well, stand at the bridge between Panggung Bandaraya and Kebangsaan building, and she said, what are you going to do? And I said, oh, I'm going to meet somebody for the River of Life project, because it was all boarded up. And she stood at the bridge and she looked down in the river, and she started counting dead fish. She goes, dead fish, dead fish, dead fish. So it was just, and then when I came back, she said, Mom, River of Life, dead fish, dead fish. So it's just something I think that we need to kind of remember, that there is this, issue as well, that when we're talking about rivers and rejuvenation, and when we canalize our rivers, we remove the verges, the riverbanks, we kill, or we don't allow the natural ecology to thrive. So we may not like snakes, and we may not like biawak, but they contribute to our ecology. So on that note, I will stop.
Thanks.
A lot of nice stories about movie, especially for environment.
Okay, I think we come to the end of the session, but
10 minutes.
I have one question for architect Heng. I think it's not fair not to let him. As an architect, you need to maintain the fabric, the heritage fabric of the building. But then at the same time, how do you balance it with the heritage of with the need of fire safety systems? Some of this fabric is not really compatible with our new standards, but how do we balance that?
Okay, this is not easy questions, but it's common questions. Okay, so a lot of people always ask this. It's just like it's actually quite similar to when you are doing heritage building as a conservator, like, you actually have to decide to what extent you need to preserve. Okay, like for example, a building, yes, you can preserve 100% for people to use it with certain commercial values. But is it once you with the 100% is safe for occupation? And this is something that you need to look at. So there is always a balance. So sometimes because of certain compliance for safety, because you cannot compromise on the human life safety and so on, then you need to do a little bit adjustment. So you might not 100% go towards what you want to preserve, but you have to be know to what extent. So this is the tricky part that you need to decide.
I think I just want to echo my teacher. You mentioned about the reason for fire. Wood does not mean fire, right? Just now. Actually, one of the main reasons for our fire in KL is actually wiring.
Wiring.
So
you are not blaming the wrong people.
The one that's next to Pangong, then there is what happened was the security guard put a plug there to charge his cell phone. That causes that fire at that.
That was idea that going there.
Yeah. That was the real
The
reason.
cause of fire, like in the statistics also show, is actually all electrical fires.
The thing is, our maintenance culture is a fault. Wiring have lifespan about 20, 30 years maximum. We don't change our wiring. When I changed the entire wiring to my house, people don't want to do that. Because when I took over the house was 40 years old. That's why I changed everything. I spent about 70,000 on this wiring.
Okay. So I think to sum up, I think reflecting back on what Dato, GMG, and then the rest is, I think I can sum up with one is the integrity, and the second is the willpower of everyone.
What you said in implementation.
Implementation.
Dato mentioned implementation as well.
Yeah.
And
So,
what, sorry? Maintenance.
so there is, I think there is always a need for a top-down approach as well as a bottom-up approach by the practitioners, by the public, in terms of awareness. So with that, I think it's a very good session. I would say thank you everyone for attending this session online as well as present today in the PAN building. So hopefully, by the way, the recording of this session will be uploaded on our YouTube website, ICOMOS Malaysia, and also will be shared on our Facebook page. So with that, thank you very much, and hope to see you again for our next session of interesting talk. We will keep you updated on our Facebook page. Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend. Thank you, everyone.